Mohist philosophy and its logical theory. Several years ago, I authored an article on Mosey's moral and political philosophy, which was published in the Academic Quarterly. Today I wish to expand that inquiry to address the Mohist cosmic philosophy, epistemology, and logical theory. You will notice that I refer to Mohist rather than Mosey specifically. This is deliberate, for my discussion encompasses the later three schools of Mohism and is not limited to Mo Dai himself. By the three schools of Mohism, I refer to those devoted to argumentation and dialectic, those devoted to expounding the classics, and those devoted to practical affairs as distinguished in the Gengzu chapter of the Mozi. This differs from the three schools mentioned in Han Feizi's eminent learning chapter, and certainly differs from the so-called three schools found in the spurious Wangbao Gilu, attributed to Tao Qian. To make our journey through Mohist thought more accessible, I will illustrate each major concept with concrete examples from everyday life. Philosophy need not be abstract. The Mohists themselves believe that clear thinking should serve practical purposes. End. Part 1. Mohist Cosmic Philosophy, 8 minutes. Let us begin with Mohist metaphysics, their inquiry into the profound principles underlying reality. The Mohists spoke of the great reaching to the cosmos, the small extending to the infinitesimal point. The Mohist canons state, long duration Ju encompasses all different times, space U encompasses all different places. Canon I 8. Example. Think of your own experience of time and space. When you recall your childhood home, you are combining a specific place with a specific time in the past. When you plan where to travel next month, you are combining future time with different places. The Mohists recognize that time and space are always experienced together, their concept of Yu-Zu, or space-time. The explanation elaborate is, Ju is ancient times and present, morning and evening. Yu is east, west, center, south, north. Example. Consider how we speak of sunrise and sunset. These terms combine time, morning, evening with space, east, west. When we say the sun rises in the east, we are making a statement about both space and time simultaneously. The Mohists understood this interconnection thousands of years before Einstein's relativity theory. When we combine these terms, we speak of Yu-Zu, space-time. Ancient present, morning and evening, these represent finite duration. The center refers to taking one's dwelling as central, for east, south, and north have no fixed names. Exemplet. If you live in Beijing, west means something different than it does to someone living in London. If you travel from Beijing to Urumqi, what was west becomes center as you relocate. The Mohists recognize that spatial terms are relative to the observer's position, a remarkably sophisticated insight. Wenzi and the Sanhui tell us, above, below, and the four directions constitute space. Past and present constitute time. The Zhuhi chapter states, heaven and earth contain the 10,000 things. Space-time contains heaven and earth. And again, that which has substance but no void is space, that which has duration but no beginning or end is time. The directions east, west, south, north, southeast, southwest, northeast, above, below constitute the six extremes. When we speak of them collectively, we speak of the six directions. Exemplet. When a carpenter builds a house, she must consider all six directions simultaneously. The walls face the four cardinal directions, the roof goes above, the foundation goes below. Every physical object occupies space in all these dimensions at once. The cosmos is ceaselessly in motion. When space shifts, there is duration. The canons continue. Motion dong is the shifting of a thing's location. Canon I, the explanation states, shifting in space while occupying a position. This is spatial change. As space moves from south to north, and exists in morning and also in evening, spatial shifting involves duration. Canon II explanation. Example. Imagine watching a bird fly from a southern tree to a northern tree. It departs in the morning and arrives in the evening. The bird's motion through space south to north necessarily involves time, morning to evening. You cannot describe the motion completely without mentioning both dimensions. This is what the Mohists mean by spatial shifting involves duration. When something shifts, it must indeed occupy a position, hence shifting while occupying a position. Zhuangzi speaks of having no fixed place. This refers to the constancy of transformation and flux, and does not contradict our text. The canons further state, a territory shifts, its name changes according to the reality. Explanation lies in the actuality. Canon II. Exemplet. Consider a person traveling from Beijing to Shanghai. While in Beijing, we call her a Beijinger. After she moves to Shanghai and resides there for years, we call her a Shanghainese. The person herself hasn't fundamentally changed, but a relationship to place has shifted, so the name changes accordingly. This is what the Mohists mean by the name changes according to the reality. The explanation clarifies a territory knowing that this is not this, and again knowing that this is not here, yet we call this south or north having passed through, the name changes. Examplet: when you cross a national border, you say now I am in country A, then after traveling, now I am in country B. The same road that was south when you were traveling north becomes north when you return. Names like south, north, here, there are not fixed, they change with your position and movement. Progress through space has no fixed proximity. Explanation lies in the sequential. Kananu. Examplet: if you walk from your home to a nearby market, the market seems close. If you continue walking to a distant city, the market now seems near relative to your starting point, but far relative to your destination. Near and far are not absolute, they depend on your entire journey and your reference points. Distance is spatial extension. Sequence is temporal duration. People travel distances and thereby experience duration. Exampleta: a journey of 100 kilometers feels different if you walk it in 2 days versus driving it in 1 hour. The space distance is the same, but the temporal experience differs. When we say it's a long trip, we often mean it takes much time, not just that the distance is great. The smallest unit of space is called the infinitesimal point, duan. The smallest unit of time is called the beginning shai. The cosmos, though vast, is accumulated from these infinitesimal beginnings. The canons state, the infinitesimal point, duan, is the body without thickness that comes first. Kananai, following Sunirang's emendation, the explanation says, the infinitesimal point is that without interval. Exampleta: think of a line drawn on paper. You can keep dividing it into smaller and smaller segments, but eventually you reach a point so small it cannot be further divided. That's the infinitesimal point. In geometry, points have position but no size. In time, think of the present moment, try to divide it into smaller units. You eventually reach an instant so brief it cannot be further divided. That's the temporal beginning. The contemporary neo-realist philosopher C.D. Broad has observed, appealing to direct experience, a line actually has breadth, that is, surface and volume. Our definition of a point today is based on non-Euclidean geometry and also on experience. The canons so state. The beginning psi is that which coincides with a moment. Kananai. The explanation elaborates. Cessation, the non-ceasing of what has no duration, is like an ox not being a horse, like an arrow passing through a rampart. The ceasing of what has duration is like a horse, and yet ceasing is not ceasing. The principle is easy to see. Examplet: an arrow in flight seems to be in one place at one instant, another place at the next instant. But at any single instant does it move. The Mohists grapple here with Zeno-like paradoxes about and time, showing their sophisticated understanding of these concepts. Zhang Binglin profoundly observed, analyzing further, the tendency leaves no stopping point. The moment we think of a time, it has already become another time. Analysis cannot be exhausted, yet we speak of time. This is establishing periodicity within non-periodicity. Exampleta: try to grasp the present moment. By the time you say now, it has already become just now. The present is always slipping away, yet we live our lives in this elusive present. This is what Zhang means by establishing periodicity within non-periodicity. Part 2, Mohist Epistemology, 8 minutes. Let us now turn to Mohist epistemology, their theory of knowledge. As Zhuangzi's External Things chapter expresses it, eyes clear constitute seeing, mind clear constitutes understanding. Human beings advance further by employing their capacity for thought and reasoning to analyze the images obtained through the senses, to discriminate among them, and to apply names to them. Their knowledge becomes clear and distinct. Mohist epistemology distinguishes 3 kinds of knowledge: knowledge by personal acquaintance, kin zi, knowledge by explanation, xiu zi, and knowledge by hearsay, wen ji. And knowledge by personal acquaintance. Knowledge by personal acquaintance comes through the 5 sense organs, what the Mohists call the 5 paths, wu lu. Exampleta: if you touch a hot stove and feel pain, that's knowledge by personal acquaintance. No amount of description can substitute for the direct experience. If someone tells you the stove is hot, that's hearsay. If you infer it's hot because you steam rising, that's knowledge by explanation. But when you actually touch it, That's personal acquaintance. Consider visual perception alone. To see an object at night, we rely not only on our eyes, but also on fire or lamplight. Yet, strictly speaking, it is the eyes see, not the fire. When we see fire, it is still with our eyes. What we see is light, not heat. As the canons state, knowing without relying on the five paths explanation lies in duration. Canon 2. Exampleta. Even without a light source, you can know what your bedroom looks like in the dark because you've seen it before in the light. Your memory duration allows you to know without cursory input. This is what the Mohists mean by knowing without the five paths. Sometimes, even without external objects corresponding to the five paths, we can know through reflection and imagination. Example: close your eyes and imagine a red apple. You can see its color and shape in your mind, even though no apple is present before your eyes. This knowledge comes from imagination, not direct sensation. Yet the images thus obtained are not as vivid as when directly confronting objects. Knowledge by explanation. Zunzi tells us, by means of that which is similar, we understand and communicate. Example: suppose I tell you that a newly discovered fruit, the mangosteen, tastes like a combination of peach and strawberry. If you have eaten peaches and strawberries, you can form a reasonable idea of what mangosteen tastes like without ever having tasted it. You are using what you know peach and strawberry flavors to understand what you don't know mangosteen flavor. For example, if someone says the color of this object is like that of jade, and we know that jade is white, we thereby know that this object is white. Knowledge of the object outside the room comes through personal acquaintance. Knowing the color of the object inside the room through comparison with the object outside constitutes knowledge by explanation. Names are like measuring tools. We use what is clear to measure what is unknown. Example: you know that 1 meter equals 100 centimeters. If you see a table and estimate it's about 150 centimeters long, you can say it's 1.5 meters. You've used your knowledge of the relationship between units to measure the unknown. The canons state, seeing constitutes knowing, that by which a thing is so, that by which we know it, and that by which we cause others to know it. These are not necessarily the same. Canon 2 with explanation. Exemplet, consider fire. The fire itself is what makes things hot, that by which a thing is so. You know the fire is hot by feeling its heat, that by which we know it. You tell someone the fire is hot, that by which we cause others to know it. These three, the fire's nature, your sensation, and your statement, are all different, yet they relate to the same reality. Fire melts metal. When fire is abundant, metal is consumed like charcoal. When white metal is abundant, this is inferring cause from effect. Example: if you see melted metal and ashes, you infer there was a hot fire. The effect tells you about the cause. If you see smoke on a mountain, you infer there is fire even though you can't see the fire directly. When knives, currency, are light, we know goods are not expensive. When knives are heavy, we know goods are not cheap. This is inferring later from earlier. Example: in economics, if you see the money supply increasing rapidly, you might infer that inflation will follow. You're using current observation to predict future events. What has been so will be so. What is absent now but cannot be absent knowing that past had it. This is inferring past from present. Example: when archaeologists find ancient tools buried in the ground, they infer that people lived there in the past. The present evidence tells us about past existence. Observing the shade beneath a room and knowing the moon's movement and yin-yang changes. Seeing water freeze in a bottle and knowing the cold throughout the world and the hiding of fish and turtles. This is inferring distant from near. Example: if you see your bathroom mirror fog up after a hot shower, you can infer that the whole room is humid, even though you can't see the humidity everywhere. The local observation tells you about the general condition. Tasting a piece of meat and knowing the flavor of an entire roast or a whole cauldron. Touching fire here and knowing that all fire everywhere is hot. This is inferring the whole from the part. Example: if you taste one grape from a bunch and find it sweet, you infer that the whole bunch is sweet. If you test one sample from a production line and find it defective, you might infer that the entire batch has problems. See knowledge by hearsay. Knowledge acquired through transmission and reception is called hearsay knowledge. Wenzi. Example: you know that Paris is the capital of France, even if you've never been there. You know water is H2O, even if you've never performed the chemical analysis yourself. This knowledge comes from books, teachers, and other authorities. It's hearsay knowledge. The practical Mohists valued personal acquaintance and adapted to circumstances. The dialectical Mohists valued inferential knowledge and built upon it. The canon state, examining Yao's governance, from present examining the ancient, from ancient reaching to present this cannot govern. And Yao's being Yao, this is Yao in the present. The actuality of Yao's being Yao resides in antiquity. Examplet. A political leader today cannot simply copy the methods of the ancient sage king Yao, because times have changed. What worked in ancient agricultural society may not work in modern industrial society. We must learn from the past but adapt to present circumstances. Part 3. Mohist Logic, 10 minutes. The dialectical Mohists, proceeding from inference to argumentation, necessarily developed methods of disputation. Mohist logical theory thus became increasingly comprehensive. The Xiaoku chapter describes the purposes and methods of disputation. Disputation, by and serves to clarify the distinctions between right and wrong, to examine the patterns of order and disorder, to clarify the points of sameness and difference, to investigate the principles of names and actualities, to handle benefit and harm, and to resolve doubts and uncertainties. Clarify right and wrong. Disputation necessarily involves a subject matter. Contention necessarily involves right and wrong, and the correct party prevails. The canons state, some call it ox, some call it not ox. Ox and not ox are clearly two different things, they cannot be mutually predicated. Examplet. In a court of law, the prosecution says, this man is guilty. The defense says, this man is not guilty. Both cannot be correct, we right, the other wrong. The purpose of the trial is to determine which claim is correct. This is what the Mohists mean by clarifying right and wrong through disputation. The subject is the actuality. Ox is an actual thing. The predication is the name. Ox and not ox are clearly two different things, they cannot be identical. To call an ox not ox is inappropriate, just as calling a dog canine is appropriate. Exampleta. If you point to a horse and say, this is an ox, you are using the wrong name for the actuality. If you point to a dog and say, this is a canine, you are using the correct name. The appropriateness of names matters. Confusion in language leads to confusion in thought and action. The canons further state, predication, if disputation has no victor, it necessarily is not appropriate. Explanation lies in the disputation itself. Canon 2. Examplet. If two people are arguing about whether a particular animal is a dog or a wolf, they can examine evidence, teeth structure, behavior, DNA to determine the truth. But if one person says, this is beautiful, and another says, this is not beautiful, they may never reach agreement because beauty is subjective. The first disputation can have a victor. The second may not, because the terms are not being used appropriately for objective disputation. B. Investigating names and actualities. A name is that by which we designate an actuality. It denotes the thing, and also connotes its attributes. Thus names have extension and intension. The Mohist canons, considering primarily extension, divide names into three categories. Names are of three kinds: universal da, classificatory lay, and particular psi, kana I. Example to universal name. Thing. This applies to everything that exists. Tables, people, ideas, atoms, galaxies. Classificatory name. Animal. This applies to all living things that move and sense, but not to plants or minerals. Particular name. Confucius. This applies to one specific historical person and no one else. Using Sunzi's terminology, universal names are great common names, classificatory names are great distinguishing names. Although the towns and things are many, we can refer to them all as things. Thing is the greatest common name, the common name beyond which there is no further commonality. Particular names are the smallest distinguishing names. Why is this? The name Zhang, a slave name, does not refer to one person, only all slaves can be called by it. Examplet. In ancient China, Zhang was a common name for slaves, just as John might be a common name in English-speaking countries. It refers to a class of people, not a specific individual. A truly particular name would be something like the philosopher who wrote the Tao Te Ching. That refers to one specific person, assuming single authorship. What then is a name? What is an actuality? The canon explanation states, informing someone of this name refers to that actuality. Examplet. If I say, please bring me that book, the name book refers to the actual physical object on the table. If you understand the name book, you know what to look for. If you don't, you might bring me a magazine instead. See distinguishing sameness and difference. The Mohist canons distinguish four kinds of sameness. Sameness, identical names referring to one actuality, this is his repetition, Kong. Being connected parts of one body, this is unity. Being together in one place, this is combination A. Having that by which they are the same, this is classification, lay. Canonai explanation. Example of repetition samnista, dog and canine, are two different names referring to the same kind of animal. If you know what a dog is, you know what a canine is. This is repetition sameness. Example of unity samnista, a hand and a finger. The finger is part of the hand. They are connected as parts on body. You cannot fully understand a finger without understanding its relation to the hand. Example of combination samnist, all the people in this room. They are together in one place, forming an audience, though they may be unrelated otherwise. Example of classification samnista, a whale and a fish both live in water and swim. Though whales are mammals and fish are not, they share the property of being aquatic swimmers. They have that by which they are the same. And four kinds of difference. Difference. Two necessarily differ. This is duality or not being connected parts. This is disunity, T. Together in one place. This is separation. Not having that by which they are the same. This is exclusion. Kananai explanation. Example of duality. A cat and a dog are two different animals. They are not the same. This is duality difference. Example of disunity. A tree and a rock. They are not connected parts of any whole. This is disunity difference. Example of separation. You are here. Your friend is in another city. You are not together in one place. This is separation difference. Example of exclusion. A stone and a thought. They share no properties. One is physical, one is mental, one has mass, one does not. They have nothing by which they are the same. This is his exclusion difference. Mohist logic and inference. The Xiao Ku chapter enumerates various forms of reasoning. 1. Or means not entirely so. Exemplita. Some swans are white. This statement allows that some swine be black, as indeed they are in Australia. It's not claiming that all swans are white. 2. Suppose Jaya means not so at present. Exemplet. If I had studied harder, I would have passed the exam. This is a hypothetical statement about a situation that didn't actually occur. 3. Analogy, by, means raising another thing to clarify this one. Example, the human heart is like a pump. We use our understanding of pumps to explain how the heart works. 4. Parallel, mo means comparing statements and letting both proceed. Example, as governing a family is like governing a state, so governing a state is like governing the world. We draw parallels between different levels of organization. 5. Example, han means, if you are so, I cannot but be so. Example, if you claim that killing is wrong applies to your enemy, then by the same principle, it must apply to you as well. You cannot make an exception for yourself. 6. Inference. Tuines using what is the same in that which is not known to judge it. Example. If all examples of copper conduct electricity, we infer that unobserved copper will also conduct electricity. We use known cases to judge unknown ones. These forms correspond roughly to hypothetical, analogical, and inductive reasoning. All inference must proceed according to class, and the operation of class lies in sameness. Hence, taking according to class, giving according to class. Example of sound reasoning. All humans are mortal, major premise. Socrates is human, minor premise. Therefore, Socrates is mortal, conclusion. This follows the class relationship. Socrates belongs to the human, which belongs to the class mortal things. Example of unsound reasoning. All dogs are mammals. All cats are mammals. Therefore, all dogs are cats. This fails because dogs and cats share the class mammals, but are not identical. They have other properties that distinguish them. The Mohists were particularly concerned with avoiding such errors. They recognized that just because two things share some properties doesn't mean they share all properties. Themia or conclusion, 2 minutes. The Mohist logical system, while not achieving the formal perfection of Aristotelian logic, represents a remarkable indigenous development of logical theory in ancient China. Its strengths lie in its close connection with empirical observation, its practical orientation toward clarifying disputes and resolving doubts, and its sophisticated analysis of language and reference. Exemplet. When modern scientists debate theories, they engage in exactly the kind of disputation the Mohists analyzed. They clarify terms, what do we mean by Jane? They examine evidence, what do the experiments show? They reason analogically, this virus behaves like that virus, and they draw inferences. If this theory is correct, we should observe that phenomenon. The basic structure of rational inquiry remains what the Mohists described. The Mohists recognize that names are tools for grasping realities, that propositions express relationships among things, and that inference must proceed according to proper methods if it is to yield reliable knowledge. Their analysis of the four kinds of sameness and difference anticipates many distinctions later developed in Western logic. Example: in biology, we classify organisms by shared characteristics, classification sameness. While recognizing that not all shared characteristics indicate close relationship, bats and birds both fly, but are not closely related. This careful attention to types of sameness and different is essential to good science. As we reflect on the Mohist philosophical legacy, we might consider how their integration of cosmic speculation, epistemological analysis, and logical theory represents an early attempt at systematic philosophy. They sought to understand not only how we should live their famous doctrine of universal concern, but also the nature of the world we inhabit and the means by which we come to know it. Let me conclude with a passage from the Mohist canons that captures something of their spirit. In investigating things, one seeks to understand their causes. In understanding causes, one seeks to apply them. In applying them, one seeks to benefit people. For the Mohists, philosophy was never merely an intellectual exercise. It was always directed toward the practical end of human well-being. Thank you.